What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. I could start this show with a rant about DraftKings and their contest sizing, but there's no point. We always hit a point in the season where they pull back. The frustrating thing today is yesterday was also an 8-game slate, and everything filled, and they almost filled secondary contests, and they just absolutely nuked their contests today. That's the only frustrating part. And then they'll tell us, people aren't as interested. It's because, they're not interested because you crushed the contest. But, we just have a couple more weeks. The first week of playoffs, round one, usually good GPPs, at least the flagship GPP. It's usually like 15 with 25K to first. But, we're still grinding it out here. We got Ironmans to hit. We got crowns to get. Not that you can cash them in. Crowns are more useless than brownie points. My parents used to be like, hey, here's some brownie points. Still haven't cashed those fuckers in. But anyway, Cliffy in his Canadiens jersey, what's going on?
Oh, not a whole lot. Just enjoying the day. Back-to-back bright sunshine. I know it's raining in New Jersey. Sorry about that. Back-to-back days of bright sunshine, plus 10 Celsius or higher here. So it's been pretty nice to be able to get outside, get your runs in, get stretching in, whatever it is that people do outside. It's nice to do that. I was caught watching the Detroit-Tampa game last night because I stacked the Lightning. Obviously, that didn't work. It's weird watching Detroit because, they do have skilled players that make plays, and it was nice. It was only the second time I've actually been able to kind of watch Simon Edmondson play, the rookie defenseman, and he looked good. I know his fancy stats don't look super stellar with the Wings so far, but I just thought the way that he played in that game, he looked like he was making a lot of positive contributions, which I think that's about all you can ask from a rookie defenseman. Good sign for next year anyway, but we have 8 games here on the slate tonight, and I mentioned this in the write-up I did today. Free to read over at Stochastic.com. Just head on over to the NHL section. A lot of superstars missing from the slate because we have no McDavid, we have no Matthews, we have no McKinnon, we have no Kucherov. Pasternak's here and Kaprizov is here, and we have Philip Forsberg and Jack Eichel, but none of the very top of the leaderboard for point producers are on this slate. And you would think that would open things up a little bit ownership-wise. However, we have the Chicago Blackhawks and Anaheim Ducks both on the road today. So there's a lot of concentrated ownership. You have to make decisions of what you want to play from those games, if anything. Kind of like the Colorado game yesterday, only with worse teams. And we saw what happened with Colorado last night. That's hockey, but should make for an interesting slate. Kind of excited to break it down.
Yeah, you said they're missing today. Those guys are also missing yesterday too. So, yeah, but it's just how it goes sometimes. Rangers are terrible, bad loss. I thought they actually played pretty well. They only gave up 21 shots. Trubo's just fucking terrible. He needs to be sheltered on the third pair with. They just run Miller, Schneider, and Lindgren, Fox, and you can play Trubo with a folding chair. I don't care. Just put him on the third line and shelter him. But yeah. Disgusting performance from Colorado. I mean, they did have 46 shots on goal. What the goal, Tarasov, I mean, it was still pretty bad, but Tarasov has been actually playing really well since the All-Star break.
Yeah, he has. That's kind of one of the things that's been missing from Columbus is reliable goaltending. Obviously they've had good games in parts of good seasons at times. But basic, Korpisalo's been fine, and Merzlikins has been fine at times. But basically since Bobrovsky left, it's just been trying to find the next guy that can fill in. Tarasov only has, I think it's 21 starts. That's not nearly enough to make a judgment, but certainly trending in the right direction, and it'd be a big boost for that team next season as they try to climb their way out of the basement.
Yeah, they have a lot of stuff to do with that team.
Yeah.
It has to hit tonight, doesn't it? I don't know. Didn't hit yesterday. Pretty ugly chalk here today, but let's talk about the slate, shall we? 8 games. Again, couple weeks left in the season. Just wanted to say thank you guys for the affiliate support, the super chats, all that jazz. Don't see our pal Mark. Otherwise, I would say also all the shit talking, but he's not here, I don't think. But yeah, no, we do like the banter. Let's talk about this slate, though. My voice goes, I apologize. Also, I had a surge on my USB port for my Ethernet. My internet's fine for now, but I might turn purple. It would be an upgrade. Washington Capitals, 2.8 total. Heading into Buffalo, the Sabres have a 3.1. This is an interesting game because Washington's currently in a playoff spot. Buffalo isn't mathematically eliminated yet. They're close. It's time to move. Hopefully 2026, I'll actually have a place where the internet works. But yeah, Buffalo's not mathematically eliminated, so it's kind of an important game for them too. They still have Peterka up on the top line with Tuck and Thompson. That line has been pond hockey-ish, you could say. They are vastly outplaying their expected goals, but their expected goals are still over 3. The Washington top line of Ovechkin, McMichael, Oshie's out, so I don't even – Wilson was there in practice, but he's suspended, right? So I don't even know who's going to be there. They're probably not going to be very good defensively. So, the Buffalo top line, 10.6% projected ownership with positive leverage here at 17.6 is definitely in play for me. They're fully correlated on the power play. It's actually a pretty decent power play spot. Like Washington's penalty kill towards the beginning of the season was pretty good. Has slid a little bit. It's still not like, oh yeah, we're playing the Ducks. Let's load in the power play, guys. But it's not the worst power play matchup. I'm in on Buffalo 1 here. Don't mind the 10% ownership. I think I prefer 10% Buffalo 1 than 20 and change percent Calgary here tonight. We'll talk about it though. You want to go to Buffalo 2 as a filler. I think that's fine, especially if you're trying to jam in Minnesota power play. That gets very expensive, and Cousins, Quinn, and Benson is 11.5. Not too much negative leverage, which is a bit surprising for an 11.5 line with a highish total, but Buffalo 1 easily my favorite in this game and on the Buffalo side. On the Washington side, it really depends who takes Oshie's spot, because like as good as Buffalo 1 is offensively, they are not very good defensively. It's a pretty decent power play spot. If it's something like Protas, I don't even Sonny Milano. Like I'm not even sure who they'll put up there, but if it's a decent combo, they'll probably be priced in the high 13s, low 14s, coming around their top 2 stack, and I wouldn't mind them in MME. It's just you might be able to get them at a low owned combo if we don't get the news. You know what I mean? People will play McMichael Ovechkin anyway, but that third person, whomever it is, will come in pretty low owned, but this is a Buffalo 1 game for me.
Yeah, we have no idea who's going to be the right wing for Washington. They also said Rasmus Sandin is going to be back in the lineup after missing the last game. I'm wondering if they don't just go 11-7.
That's definitely possible.
Yeah, but then the thing with that is they don't really have the right wingers that you would want to cycle through, right?
That's true.
You're looking at Alexei Protas, Sonny Milano, and Nicholas Aube-Kubel. Like, are those the guys you want to be double shifting? I'm a Sonny Milano fan, but don't get me. I don't think he's a 21-minute a night right winger or something like that. So
maybe they move Strome up and move McMichael to the wing.
That's what I was thinking. Honestly, is that I think they run 3 centers, and it's going to be Strome and Dowd and Lapierre, and then put McMichael on the wing. That's what I was about to get to. But we'll know. I mean, we'll know at warm up. I think the bigger point is this. I was looking at Alex Ovechkin's last 41 games played, so half a season. Okay, with TJ Oshie, 2.79 expected goals against per 60. Without TJ Oshie, 3.32, and the goals against go way up. They've obviously they've been riding a little bit hot with goaltending behind them right now, like 960 save percentage hot with Oshie on the ice. But the defense gets a lot worse when Ovechkin has literally any other winger beside him. That's something that I wanted to note because Buffalo had been trying to use Dylan Cousins in a shutdown role. I don't think they'll be doing that here tonight. Like they didn't do it on the weekend, and I don't think they'll be doing it here tonight with Benson and Quinn as the wingers. I don't think they'll be using the Peyton Krebs line. So it'll be either the fourth line or the Tage Thompson line. That'll be put in a shutdown role. And I wrote about the Tage Thompson line in the picks article today because you're right. That line has been very good offensively. Over 3.5 expected goals created in 67 minutes together. So it's like 3.1 per 60 minutes. Scored 8 goals. They're riding a hot 16.3% shooting. But what I noted is that even they're creating so many shots that even if they were just shooting 10%, they would still be like 60 to 65% above the league average in goal scoring rate. Like that's how many shots they're creating when they're on the ice. And if they're going to be matched up against an Ovechkin line that is probably going to be worse defensively, I really do like Buffalo 1 here. Now, there is a fair bit of ownership coming in on them. The Top Stacks tool has them at 10.6% on DraftKings, 12.9% top 2 stack probability. If they come in at 10, 11% in MME, if they're, up around 15% in single entry, that really doesn't worry me on an 8-game slate, especially where you're going to have like Islanders and Calgary Flames chalk. You know what I mean? Like I'd rather have, Tage Thompson, Alex Tuck, and JJ Peterka as my chalk than, just about any Calgary line. So I really do like Buffalo 1 here. If you wanted to dip down, I think Cousins, Benson, and Quinn is playable. With Jordan Greenway out, Zach Benson looks like he's going to be taking a spot on the top power play unit, so you'll get at least one guy on the top power play unit. Cousins and Benson really haven't been generating a lot without Peterka, and they don't really have much of a sample with Quinn. I imagine they'll be able to create well offensively. But the thing is like, if they're not going to be matched up against the Ovechkin line, then you're running the risk of getting into that Pacioretty-Lapierre line, which has been good defensively. You're running the risk of getting the Nick Dowd line, which has been really good defensively, obviously. I think there are 3 playable lines for Buffalo, but if I'm playing a single entry here tonight, I want Buffalo 1. So Buffalo 1 for me on their side. On the Washington side, I think they go 11-7, so that makes it a little bit tougher to stack. I'm a pretty big fan of Dylan Strome. I'm not a big fan of him playing with Alexei Protas and Ivan Miroshnichenko. If he had almost any other line mates in that lineup, I would probably be playing that line. So I guess it's whatever the Ovechkin line would end up being. So because as good as Buffalo's top line has been offensively, they still do give it up a little bit on defense. And, the Buffalo penalty kill is nothing tremendous. It's not like, Dallas or Carolina or Vancouver or anything like that. So both top lines for me in this game, but I have Buffalo 1 and Top Stacks has a Buffalo 1 rated quite a bit ahead by top 2 stack probability. So I think I'd rather play the Sabres side.
Yeah, I am on the Sabres too. My internet is fluctuating, but I got the Ethernet plugged back in, so we'll deal with it. Florida Panthers with a 3.5 total. Heading into Montreal, the Canadiens have a 2.4 total. Verhaeghe is out. He got hurt yesterday. My hat trick pick got nuked. So they're going Reinhart, Barkov, Tarasenko, Evan Rodriguez, Sam Bennett, Matty Tkachuk, and then Lusteron and Lundell Okposo. Cliffy posted something in our Discord this morning about actually how good Montreal was. It Montreal won or Montreal as a team?
Yeah. No, the Suzuki line specifically.
Yeah, they've actually their last 4 games or whatever against really good opponents are barely underwater, which I was shocked because, they went through the gauntlet there. I mean, the Tarasenko with the Barkov Live with Tarasenko up there is, still good offensively. And he's probably going to be power play 1 at 3,800. That's the issue. You know what I mean? Like, they have a 3.5 road total, the highest on the slate. It's still Barkov and Reinhart. Like, as good as Montreal 1 has been, I still think I'm in on Florida 1 here. They're fully correlated on the power play. It's a great power play spot. You get the discount. Verhaeghe was in the 7Ks. Tarasenko's in 3,800. Get the 3K discount on the power play. So I'm in on Florida 1 here. Not so much on the second and third lines. I think Matty Tkachuk is a fine one-off. I mean, the second line's fine going into that new hook line. Like, it's a really good 5-on-5 matchup, but I want as many power play guys as I can. On the Montreal side, I actually don't mind Montreal 1 now that Tarasenko's up there, even if it is a Barkov line. But that's MME type stuff only because they have a 2.4 total. It's the second lowest on the slate behind the Chicago Blackhawks. So I don't want to make my living with Montreal tonight. And they're still 16-5. You know what I mean? If they're like 14-1, something like that, I'd be more apt to play them. But we have Buffalo 1 sitting at 17-6. You have other lines in that range and much better matchups. I would go play them. I still think, if you get a little bit in MME, I think that's fine.
Yeah. Another thing that I mentioned to you, and it was kind of funny because I was just looking at penalty killing stats over the last 6 weeks. And I happened to look at 5-on-5 stats on top of that. And over the last 6 weeks, the Montreal Canadiens have a better expected goals against rate and actual goals against rate at 5-on-5 than Florida does. They've obviously had some bad games in pretty recent history. So, it all depends on where you cut off the sample. It was just something that I came across that I thought was pretty interesting. And yes, the Suzuki line has generally been able to hold the opposition to not very much over the last month or so. Like, we're talking like Matthews, Pasternak, Aho, like those types of guys. He's been able to limit them pretty well. And, Montreal's top line since the trade deadline, it's been almost a month now. 2.6 expected goals against per 60. That's about league average. So they have been doing pretty well defensively. Montreal's top line, 2.9 expected goals for, 3.3 actual goals for in that span. And the thing is, Cole Caulfield has 1 goal in his last 19 games. So what would that goal scoring rate look like if Cole Caulfield wasn't shooting like 3% or something like that? It's actually lower than that. It's like 1.8% in his last 19 games. So Montreal's top line has actually been playing pretty well at both ends of the ice. And, Florida is the most penalized team in the league over the last 6 weeks. They've surpassed Anaheim. 5.3 minor penalties taken per game over the last 6 weeks. Like, I understand not wanting to play the Habs here tonight because Florida is generally a very good team. The thing is like there's not a lot to pay up for. Like, if you don't play Minnesota 1, assuming Verhaeghe's out and Tarasenko's on the top line, if you don't play Minnesota 1, there's not a $20,000 line on this slate, right? So you're going to be playing a bunch of mid-price lines, and it's about figuring out which mid-price lines you want to play. I'm not super high on Montreal personally in this game. I just think that they are playable at 4% ownership against a team that's taking a lot of penalties. Montreal can get there on the, if they get 4 or 5 power play opportunities. I'm not in so much on Montreal 2. The thing is like, unless you're playing Minnesota 1, there's no need to play them, right? That's just kind of the issue is, Minnesota 1 is really expensive. We'll talk about them later. Other than that, there's not a $20,000 line on this slate. So why would you go play a sub $9,000 line? Like, if you want a one-off new hook for the power player, one-off Armia or something like that, yeah, that's fine. If you're playing a 3-2-1 lineup or something, I just don't see any need to stack. The Florida side is where it does get more interesting. Barkov and Tarasenko have been good offensively in their time together. 2.8 expected goals, 3.8 actual goals per 60 minutes. That they're outscoring their expected goals isn't a surprise. I will note Tarasenko shooting 28% in a Florida uniform. He was shooting like 14, 15% with Ottawa, and he's never cracked 15% in a season like this. He can shoot 13, 14, 15%. He can't shoot I mean, he can shoot 20% for a few weeks like any player can. I wouldn't expect him to. So that's the one thing that I'm worried about. Tarasenko had 4 shots in last night's game. That's the most that he's had in any single game with Florida. He has 18 shots in 12 games with the team. But he is going to get top line, top power play. Montreal's penalty kill is still very bad. The only reason their penalty kill has been anywhere near decent of late is because Montembeault and Primo have been really good. And whenever you have a team overperforming thanks to goaltending, like that's kind of a red flag. And I think that's exactly what's going on with Montreal. So I also do like Florida 1 here. I think both top lines are definitely in play. The question of whether to play Florida 2 or not is where I think things get a little bit interesting. Like Evan Rodriguez is a good player. Sam Bennett is a good player. They're not high percentage shooters, right? Like that's kind of a problem. Like Evan Rodriguez, I really do like him as a player. He's shooting 6.5% this year. He has 1 season in his career where he shot above 9%. Like he just can't finish. And Sam Bennett's like kind of the same thing. It's not nearly as bad as Rodriguez. But Bennett's at 11.3% this year. He's never had a season above 12% since his rookie year. Like these aren't like high percentage finishers. These are guys that rely on volume, and you can create volume against Montreal. But I think I'd be more apt to one-off guys from the second line. Like I think I'd be more apt for like I think one-offing Matt Tkachuk certainly makes a lot of sense. I think one-offing, a cheap Evan Rodriguez or something would make sense. I just don't know about full stacking. If I full stack anything, it'd be the Florida top line. So Florida 1, Montreal 1, and then maybe some pieces from Florida 2.
Yeah. I mean, it is back-to-back on the road too. So like, I don't know. Definitely the highest road total by well over 10%. So I just don't know. Like, we'll see what happens. Pittsburgh Penguins with a 2.9 total. Heading into New Jersey, the Devils have a 3.5. We have found one of the chalkier spots of the night, and it's not on the Pittsburgh side. Bratt, Heischer, Meyer, 18.6% top 2 stacks, 17.2% projected ownership. A little bit of positive leverage there. Hughes, Hall, Holtz, 11.1% top 2 stack, 21.3% projected ownership. That's an issue because, like, I don't want to play a Hall line at 21%. I think Holtz is fine, but he plays 12, 13, 14 minutes, whatever. And the top line for the Devils, Heischer, Bratt, Meyer, their sample is getting larger, and they're still over 4 expected goals per 60 minutes. And they're getting a pit back-to-back on the road team. And the Crosby, Rust, Riley Smith moved up there in game yesterday, but they've generally been high event. So I much prefer New Jersey 1 here. I think Hughes is a pretty good one-off. He's going to be high owned, though. I mean, it's fine. It's not the best power play matchup, though. So if you are going to use Hughes, I don't really want to bring Hall along for the ride, but maybe you do. Like that ownership is just a bit much for me. It's not like it's a great power play matchup, and we have the Ducks on this slate, so and the Canadians. There's really good power play spots on the slate, so I'm probably not into New Jersey 2 as much. I'm definitely in on New Jersey 1. Bratt, Heischer, Meyer. On the Pittsburgh side, like I know they had a good game yesterday from a DFS standpoint. Thank Jacob Trouba. But the Devils' blue line they have a bunch of Jacob Trouba. So like maybe you go back to pit 1 here, Crosby, Rust, Riley Smith, but like they're more expensive than New Jersey 1. I'll go to the home team with, save some money, higher total, not back-to-back on the road. I think Crosby, Rust, Smith is fine in MME, especially with the positive leverage that they're getting. But this is a New Jersey 1 game for me.
Yeah. Thanks, Jacob Trouba, for ruining my DFS night last night. 3 goals against at 5-on-5.
Same.
Unbelievable. Rust and Crosby are up to 250 minutes without Jake Gensel. 3.7 expected goals, 3.4 actual goals per 60. Crosby has 26 points in his last 20 games with over 3 shots per game. Brian Rust, like, he's been injured a lot, but his goal pace is nearly for 40 goals in a full season. Like, this is a good top line. There's two things that worry me stacking Pittsburgh, which is funny because I say that the day after when I was like, oh, well, the only way I play Pittsburgh is if I was MME. And then Pittsburgh goes out and outdoes all the top lines last night. Anyways, 2 things. One, it looks like Jonas Siegenthaler's could be back for New Jersey here tonight. That should help out defense a little bit. 2, New Jersey has legitimately one of the best penalty kills in the league, and they have for a few months now. The only time they've ever run into trouble was when the goalies that they shipped out of town sucked, and there's probably a reason why they got shipped out of town. Generally speaking, as long as their goalies are anywhere near average while they're shorthanded, their penalty kill is really good. So you're relying on Pittsburgh to get there completely at 5-on-5, and that line is $19K, right? Like, with the savings on the Florida top line, that Pittsburgh line is like the 3rd or 4th most expensive line on the slate. Like, that's why there's no ownership coming in on them. Top 2 Stacks has that Pittsburgh line coming in at 2% ownership. I think they're playable. It's the same thing as yesterday, though. I just think that there are other lines I would rather play, and that feels kind of dangerous considering how well, Crosby and Rust have been producing of late. But I honestly think this is a situation where I'd want to go to the 2nd and 3rd lines on the Pittsburgh side. Like, Bunting and Malkin, like, they've been pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, 110 minutes together. They're at 71 shot attempts, 3 expected goals per 60, 2.8 actual goals per 60 minutes. Now, Bunting's been losing a little bit of ice time compared to when he was playing with Crosby. I think that's kind of expected. But at 13,400, like, they're one of those lines, like, if you're playing Nashville, or even if you're playing Florida, or even if, you're playing one of those 19K-ish lines, they're a line that you can put in there with them. So you go up against, New Jersey 2 and New Jersey 3. New Jersey's second line, about league average defensively. New Jersey's 3rd line, really not anything to worry about. So I kind of like Pittsburgh 2 more than Pittsburgh 1, but I think the entire top 6 is definitely in play. It is the New Jersey side I like better because, as you mentioned, it's not just that Brad, Hischier, and Meyer have been really, really good offensively, but I noted this in the article because I did write up Timo Meyer. What I noted is that even without Meyer there, they were really, really good offensively. So 4.1 expected goals, 4.6 actual goals with Meyer. And in 384 minutes without him, the offensive numbers are basically the same. Like, I just wanted to point that out because it's not like Meyer's helping them a lot. It's Brad and Hischier have been able to do a lot of damage offensively with Andre Palat, with Dawson Mercer, and now with Timo Meyer. I think it was Mercer who was on the left wing after Palat. This season's running so long that they've been able to produce extremely well, regardless of the left winger. So I really do like New Jersey 1 here in this matchup. I'm not worried about any of the defensive matchups from the Pittsburgh side. And of all the things you mentioned about Pittsburgh, there's also the goaltending because Tristan Jarry was a game-time scratch yesterday, and Nedeljkovic had to start. So if Jarry can't play here tonight, they're either going with Nedeljkovic in a back-to-back, both games of a back-to-back, or they're going with an AHL goalie, AHL call-up. Now, I haven't seen any official word yet one way or another. I imagine we'll know here probably in the next 2 to 3 hours. Well, we should know before warm-ups. But they could get either a tired goalie or an AHL goalie to face as well. Like, yes, there is a lot of ownership on New Jersey. I think New Jersey 1 is still very much in play. If you want to, I feel bad leaving Jack Hughes off the stack. Like, I know he's going to be highly owned, but Hughes' last 20 games, it seems like he's been bad, but he really hasn't. Last 20 games, he has 9 goals, 21 points, and 4.5 shots per game. Like, that's really good for DFS. If you want to leave one of the wingers off and put Hughes in instead, I think that's fine. But it's New Jersey 1 I like best in this game by quite a bit. And then Pitt 2. And then I think New Jersey 2 is in play. But honestly, if I'm dipping down to a second line, I'm probably going to the Pittsburgh side.
Yeah, I went to go look. There's no word yet. I mean, I would be shocked if we got something before 6:30 Eastern. Maybe the coach speaks in a couple hours, but I don't know. Chicago Blackhawks, 2.3 total heading into Long Island. This is just miserable. Miserable team going into a miserable place. The miserable team has a 3.6 total. These lines, man. Islanders going Barzal, Horvat, Casey Cizikas, Nelson, Palmieri, Engvall, Anders Lee, JG Pageau, Fashing. Chicago going Bedard, Kurashev, Dickinson, Johnson, Flino, Radish, Anthony Ciu, Anderson, Reichel. Wow. Super heavy ownership on the Nelson Palmieri line. 18.1% projected ownership, 6% top 2 stack. Like, it's just because they have a massive sample of being good, and the Blackhawks have a massive sample of suck. So, like, of being shit. So, like, I get it. But at the same time, like, it's like I'm trying to talk myself into Horvat, Barzal, Casey Cizikas, but, like, I don't know. Like anyone on that line could be fine in this matchup, I think. But it's just like it's like a mental thing, clicking in top line Casey Cizikas. I just don't want to do it. Islanders have the biggest total on the slate, which is just crazy. Islanders and Calgary tied for the highest total on the slate. Islanders the biggest favorite on the slate. Like, ownership agnostic, it would be the Nelson line easily, but the Barzal, Horvat, Cizikas line coming in with half the ownership, less than half the ownership, higher top 2 stack. I'm probably going to go Barzal, Horvat, Casey Cizikas. If you want to leave Casey Cizikas off, like, that's fine, and go Horvat, Barzal, but, like, I don't want to play an 18% Nelson, Palmieri, Engvall. So it would be Barzal, Horvat, Cizikas for me. On the Chicago side, like, these lines are so bad. Like, I don't think I'm playing any Chicago outside of Bedard one-off, and even that seems bad too. So out on the Blackhawks.
I'm going to be honest. Before we got the top stacks run and all that, I was looking at playing the Nelson, Palmieri, Engvall line. I'm not playing them at 18% ownership. I'm just not. Like, if this was a 3-game slate, maybe. On an 8-game slate, I don't think so. I think I'd honestly be more inclined to just, like, take Casey Cizikas off and put Nelson on and just make it a power play stack of some sort. For me, on the Islander side, it's about Barzal, Horvat, and Cizikas. Like, I know what Josh means about having some sort of mental block for clicking Casey Cizikas in your lineup. But honestly, like, the players that I've clicked into lineups this season, like, I've definitely played Joel Armia. Like, I've definitely played Klim Kostin. Like, I've definitely played Andrei Kuzmenko. I've definitely played Michael Carcone. There have definitely been some question mark players that I put in my lineups at different points this season. Like, I'm not above playing Casey Cizikas, I can tell you that much. And the thing is again, unless you're playing Minnesota, you don't really need the salary savings, because you can play Barzal, Horvat, and Cizikas with the new Florida 1 line, put in an $8,000 goalie, and still have like 7 or 8K left for your defenseman or whatever it is. Like, you don't need the savings to play the Islanders second line unless you're specifically going after Minnesota. So, like, or if you want to, double stack 2 $6,500 defensemen or something like that on DraftKings, like, then yeah, maybe. But that's usually not how I build my single entries. So I'm out on Islanders 2. I'm in on Islanders 1. I think a big reason is because I'm fairly convinced they're going to go against the Bedard, Kurashev, Dickinson line. And you and I were talking before the show. Like, Bedard and Kurashev, it doesn't matter who's been on their line. They've just been absolutely horrific defensively. Like that's why Jason Dickinson is playing center for them now. And Bedar's been moved to the wing. It's because they have been so bad defensive. Like I'm talking like Anaheim Ducks last year bad defensively. That's why you're seeing Jason Dickinson there. And it's like, can moving Dickinson there in a large sample make them anything approaching respectable defensively? Because they have a long, long way to go. It's not like this team, it's not like they were at like 3 expected goals against or 2.9 expect. They were at like 3.6, 3.7. Like they would honestly have, like Jason Dickinson would have to make them better by about 30% by himself just to get anywhere close to a league average defensive line. So like I'm maybe he can do it. I think it's just too much to ask. I'm in on Islanders one. It's not a tremendously good power play matchup because Chicago doesn't take a lot of penalties, but the penalty kill has been sliding. Islanders one for me. Question is what to do about the Chicago line. Like I think you can play Bedard, Kershev, Dickinson. Like I'm not against playing them. The thing is like when there's like basically every line on this slate is a mid-priced line. It's like, am I going to run out and go play, Chicago on the road against the Islanders instead of playing Montreal or instead of playing Vancouver? Like, why would you play Chicago on the road when you can just go play Vancouver instead? Like, that's just kind of the way that I look at it. So I'm not very much in on Chicago, though I do understand why people might want to play them.
I got up because my son was eating some leftover Easter ham earlier today at the table. He's 8 months old. He makes a huge mess. My Chihuahua my Chihuahua's 12 years old. She thought she was 3 years old again, and she tried to jump up onto the kitchen table to get some, and she smacked her head right on the corner of the table and crashed to the ground. This house is crazy, but yeah. Ottawa Senators with a 3 total. Heading into Minnesota, the Wild have a 3.4 total. Montreal won 24-7. $2,000 more than Colorado was last night. 30.6% top 2 stack, 5.8% projected ownership. We were talking about this game a fair bit before the show because I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't really want to pay that much for a Minnesota one line. And then, it's the Sens and this and that. And then you start digging into the Pinto, Kachuk, Batherson line, and they actually have been pretty low event with decent defensive numbers. And then you brought up basically I don't want to say the elephant in the room or whatever it is. Like, they haven't been playing Hamonic. And he is Jacob Trouba on steroids. Like, the team is just so much better when he's out of the lineup. So do I really want to commit $24,700 for, like, they're a good line, don't get me wrong, but they're not the Colorado ones. They're not McDavid's. And I know they didn't do anything last night, but like, over the course of the season, they're going to give you monster performances. And I know that this line, not even 2 months ago, had a double hat trick. But like 24,700 seems like a really, really steep task with, you have, Florida with a discount tonight. You have the Devils line under 19,000. You have, you have Buffalo at 17,600. You have couple Islanders lines at 16 and 13K. You know what I mean? Like, the one thing I will say is their ownership is good. It's not like Colorado won last night with 44% top 2 stack and 31% ownership or whatever it was. You're getting them at 5.8% projected. So if you're going to spend up, it's going to be contrarian. You know what I mean? So like, if that interests you, you play them. Like, I like this line. I like all these players on this line. It's just really, really expensive. So like, I think what I would do is maybe, do like a Kaprizov one-off. I don't know if what's his face is still running the power play. Not Faber. It wasn't Faber recently. It was who was it? My brain. Hold on, I will tell you.
It was Chisholm, wasn't it?
Chisholm. Yeah. So like maybe I do like I don't know if you get confirmation, but you can take like a speculative stab of like Kaprizov Chisholm 2-man or something like that at lowish ownership. I think Minnesota 1's fine. I don't think I'm going to commit 24,700 in my single entry. You can certainly do it. Minnesota 2 is okay as a filler, but like outside of Minnesota 1, you're not really in need of spending up anything for. Like the two most expensive lines after that are Ottawa 1 and Pitt 1. Pitt 1's on the road. Ottawa 1's on the road. If you play Ottawa 1 min 2, you're game stacking on an 8-game slate, which is fine, but like that's not something I'm going to be doing in single entry. So I think a Zuccarello 1-off is fine. Rossi Zuccarello 2-man's fine, but Minnesota 1 for me in MME. In single entry, I'm probably 1-offing. On the flip side, it would probably be Stützle Giroux, but like they have a 3 total, and that's the thing that's kind of making me a little confused because the Tkachuk Pinto Batherson line is pretty low event. It's not the best matchup. Stützle and Giroux have been pretty good, but like I don't know. Like I don't really love the Sens despite a 3 total is what I'm saying. So Minnesota 1 for me.
Yeah, this is we don't usually show stuff from other websites very often on this show. Like we do try to promote our own. I just want to try to hammer home the point about Travis Hamonic that we're trying to make here. So this is from a website called Hockey Biz, and this is where the opposing team shoots from with Hamonic on the ice and without. Red is bad. The more red there is, the worse it is. Okay. This is with Travis Hamonic, and this is without Travis Hamonic. Look at this difference. It's a bloodbath with him on the ice, and they're actually respectable with him off the ice. That's the point that we're trying to get across here. This guy sucks. And I just think that a lot of the improvement that Ottawa has seen lately, at least defensively, is just not playing the worst player on their roster game in and game out. Like he's only played once in the last month or so. So it's one of those things where I'm still kind of in on Minnesota. I don't know if I'm like half my salary cap in on Minnesota. You know what I mean? Like, because at that point, like there's really not a lot for like 10K or below lines that you can put in. There are a couple, like we mentioned Montreal earlier, there's going to be some Anaheim lines that you can play. There's like certainly Chicago or third line from Pittsburgh, like those kinds of things. There's really not a lot that you can play with Minnesota. And I'm not sure that I want to spend half my salary cap on them. I'm going to be honest, like I'm kind of tempted by Minnesota too. Like Johansson, Rossi, like assuming Marcus Johansson takes Ryan Hartman's spot on the second line. Like Johansson, Rossi, and Zuccarello, I was looking at their numbers basically just since like Christmas. Their expected goal share is almost at like 60%. Like they're dominating the opposition. And, the second line for Ottawa has not been that strong. The third line certainly hasn't. I think that second line for Minnesota can do some damage at 5-on-5. Like I'm kind of I'm fine with Kaprizov as a one-off. I'm fine if you want to save money to use Boldy as a one-off. I'm just not sure I want to full stack the top line. I think if I full stack anything, it would be Minnesota too. On the Ottawa side, I don't have a ton of interest in very much that they have. Like I don't really want to play the second line. I'm more interested in the top line than anything because you get 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play unit, and it's Minnesota's penalty kill that's still very, very bad. I would want as many guys on the top power play unit. So certainly the top line. We'll talk about defensemen later. If you just want to play Jacob Chikrin, that's fine. Or maybe like the top line plus Jake Sanderson, something like that. I think that's how I'd approach Ottawa. I would try to get at least 2 or 3 guys from the top power play unit in my lineup. other than that, Minnesota 2 for me.
Yeah, you know what? Like we were talking yesterday, like Colorado 1, those guys play 24, 25, just insane minutes. And Kaprizov easily gets over 20 minutes. He's played over 21 minutes, 15 of the last 16 games. Matt Boldy's 7,300, which is not cheap. And he's only been over 19 minutes, 2 of the last 7 games. Joe Eriksson, this is his 3rd game back.
Yeah, Joel Eriksson, he's under 3 shots per game in his last 20 games. Like a lot of the shots are going to Kaprizov or, even the defenseman or something like that. He's not shooting at the normal volume that he is.
Yeah. And that's why, like, the case is for Kaprizov one-off here. Like, he had a terrible start to the season. He has 82 points in 66 games. You know what I mean? He's going to get his 21, 22, 23 minutes. He's the focal point of the offense. Boldy's good. Don't get me wrong, but, like, he's played 17, 18 minutes most of the time here at that price. Fire everywhere. Nashville, interesting from a DFS perspective. No one's playing Nashville 1 here. They're the 2nd most expensive line on the night. They're the same price as Ottawa 1, 19-3. They're home. I think they're going to be going out. Excuse me, my voice. Against Marchand, Coyle, DeBrusque. That line isn't that great defensively. Like Boston's a pretty good defensive team. This isn't like the Bergerons and the Krejci defensive teams of even as last year. You know what I mean? Coyle, DeBrusque, Marchand, league average-ish. You know what I mean? Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist, 19-3, fully correlated on the power play, 2.6% projected ownership. I think they're a pretty interesting spend-up option on the slate. I think they're going to go overlooked a little bit. Boston has that reputation. They still do. So I think they're an interesting MME. Like in 20 max, getting like 3 at 20, being like 6x the field is something that I would probably be doing. In single entry, I have them circled. I don't think I'm going to get there, but they are definitely intriguing to me. Will I get there? I only have like 6 lines circled, so maybe. But, I do like them. Nashville depth, I'm not so much in on. They're all super cheap, but like doesn't really interest me because they flip-flop lines all the time. So on the Boston side, it would be Pastrnak, Zacha, Heinen at 17.9. It is Saros in net, and he has, been pretty good, but calling them the bang line. We got to get that started, right? They're the bang line, DDP, or no? Yeah, DDP. Yeah. That is the line that I'd be interested in. Pastrnak, Zacha, Heinen. Almost 8% projected ownership. I don't love it. Again, David Pastrnak one-off, always in play. I think I prefer Nashville 1. I think it's my favorite line in the game.
Yeah, I don't. I'm going to be honest. I don't really have a ton of interest in either of the top lines here. One thing is Nashville doesn't take a lot of penalties, and their penalty kill has generally been pretty good. I'm pretty sure they got lit up by Arizona last week, but it's one game. Those things happen. Like remember when Minnesota scored like 4 power play goals against Florida? Like those things happen once in a while. Boston's penalty kill has been getting a lot better too. Like mainly their goaltending's been getting a lot better on the PK, and now you're expecting like a $19,300 Nashville top line to get there probably all at 5-on-5 or with the empty net. I think that's just asking too much. Same thing on the Boston side. Like you're asking, either of those lines to get there all at 5-on-5 or into the empty net. Honestly, I think if anything, it would be Pastrnak, Zacha, and Heinen. They're at 3 expected goals, 5.3 actual goals per 60. Probably going to get some depth matchups against Nashville, and avoiding Ryan O'Reilly and that McDonough-Yossi pairing is probably for the best for them. Zacha has 11 points in his last 10 games. Like I'd probably be more interested in Boston the David Pastrnak, Pavel Zacha, Dan Heinen line, that old DDP line, bang line. But I really don't have a lot of interest in stacking either side. I will say that Zucker-Sissons duo has been absolute dynamite together. 69 shot attempts, 4.4 expected goals per 60. Zucker at 2.7 shots per game for Nashville. If I'm not that worried about the power play matchup, then it's more about the 5-on-5, and they've been good at 5-on-5. I think they're one of those. I think that Zucker-Sissons line is one of those lines that you can stack with Minnesota if you are playing them. And Cody Glass was on the top power play unit last game, so I think Zucker-Sissons and Glass might be my favorite stack out of this game. Otherwise, I'm just picking some one-offs.
Yeah. I'm a little bit higher on Nashville 1 than you. My dog is still doing stupid stuff, but they're dogs. Let's talk about the Ducks. Anaheim Ducks, they 2.5 total heading into Calgary. The Flames have a 3.6. Okay. Kadri, Kuzmenko, Pospisil, 13,000. 5.2% top two stack, 19.2% projected ownership. Coleman back on Huberdeau, 14.5, 5.5% top two stack, 10.7% projected ownership. I don't know, man. Like, that Backlund, Coleman, Huberdeau line is going to probably go into, Carlson, Terry, Killorn. And for a Ducks line, that line actually is pretty decent defensively for a Ducks line. I mean, they're better than league average with their goals against numbers. So, like, then you go to Kuzmenko, Kadri, Pospisil, and they're obviously in a really good 5-on-5 matchup, but this line kind of sucks. It's a Kuzmenko line. What do you expect? Like, if it was Kadri, Zari, Pospisil, I would flag plant. You know me. I'm a Zari slappy, but like Kuzmenko sucks, man. And 19.2% projected ownership. That line is barely above water it's like, I don't want to play 13. They're 13,000. That's the issue. And they're going up against the Ducks. But like, I don't know, man. If the Flames power play was better, I'd be more interested, because this is a really, really good power play spot. It's just like the Flames power play hasn't been anything great, and their top unit goes across 3 even strength lines. So, like, what do you even do here at that ownership? Like, I don't really want to play Sharon Govich, Kuzmenko, Kadri. Like, you could, but like at that point, I'd rather go play Florida. I'd rather go play Buffalo. I'd rather go play the Devils. You know what I mean? So in single entry, I don't really want to full stack anything. I think like a one-off Kadri is fine. I think a one-off Huberdeau is fine. A one-off Sharon Govich, just because they're on the power play. I just don't think I want to full stack anything on the Calgary side at that ownership. When you get to the Ducks side, right? I think I'm not saying let's go out and play some Ducks here, but maybe I am. McTavish, Zegras, Strome, 10,900 going into that Kadri Kuzmenko line. Like, I'm okay with that, especially if you're going to play Minnesota 1. Like, maybe I'm just a giant Duck slappy, but like that Kadri line in a small sample is pretty bad defensively. So like, I don't mind McTavish, Zegras, Strome if you're spending up for Minnesota 1. There's only so many options. You have like Buffalo 2, Montreal 2, this Ducks team, or you know what I mean? I guess you could play Sharon Govich, Zari, Coronado as well, but like, I don't mind McTavish, Zegras, Strome. I'm not saying go out and play them in single entry. I'm not saying, I'm going to play them tonight. I'm not. But if you're slamming in Minnesota 1 in MME, I think this is one of the lines that you can pair with them. But I don't particularly love this game. Like, I like the Flames in theory. It's just the ownership in these lines is just killing me. I'd rather go play the other teams that I mentioned.
Yeah, I agree with you on Calgary on this front, that I'm more tempted to just one off somebody, like just one off Kadri. something like that. Like, I don't want to even say like one-off Huberdeau. I'm pretty sure somebody took down a tournament earlier this year, one-offing Jonathan Huberdeau when he had a 3-point game. And it was one of those nights that made me like kind of question my entire existence as a human being.
It was the first night of Kuzmenko, Huberdeau, Sharangovich when we just shit-talked how no one shoots on that line.
Yeah. Anyways, like certainly a one-off Kadri, I think, is in play. Like if you wanted, just dumpster dive and just throw in like a one-off Kuzmenko for super cheap because you need a cheap winger. Like, I think that's fine. If I'm stacking Calgary, I probably just power play stack here. And I hope that this ends up like a 6-1 game or something like that, or a 7-1 game. I put in Huberdeau, I put in Kadri, I put in Sharangovich, I put in Uyghur. Like, I put in the entire top power play unit. Because the thing is like they're so cheap. You can put them in and put in an 8K goalie and then still have room for like another $5,000 defenseman, and then you have like 10 or 11K left over for a 2-man stack. Like, that's probably the approach I would take, because Anaheim, second most penalized team in the league on a per game basis over the last 6 weeks. They're at 4.9. Remember, Florida's at 5.3. No other team is above 3.9. So like they're a full minor penalty per game clear of the next most penalized team. Calgary has been drawing power plays. They're at 3.8. I think that's 4th in the league in that span, 4th or 5th. So Calgary's been drawing a lot of power plays. Anaheim's been taking a lot of penalties. Like, I would just be really tempted in just power play stacking. Maybe the power play goes like 2 for 5, and then, you get a goal from a couple lines at 5-on-5 or something like that, and then you're on your way. Like, that's kind of how I'd approach Calgary. For me, I'm not so keen on just full fading here. Like, maybe Johnny Gibson pulls a Danil Tarasov and has like a 44 out of 45 save performance or something like that. Considering how bad Anaheim's penalty kill has been, I don't think that that's very likely. So I think it's one-offing or power play stacking. Like, that's kind of where I'm at with the Flames. On the Anaheim side, I think I agree with you on the Zegras, McTavish, Strome line. Like, they're a fine line to put in with Minnesota, but that's the thing, is like, unless you're playing Minnesota, like, there's no real reason to play them. Otherwise, I don't think so. Like, I think they're fine to play. I'm just not super stoked about playing them because, like, I'm probably not playing Minnesota here tonight. So that's just kind of it.
Yeah, like on the Calgary side, again, just like I think what I would do is just go Kadri, Uyghur, add in one of the other guys and call it a day. The thing with like the Kuzmenko one-off, it's like at that point, why wouldn't you just go play Tarasenko? You know what I mean? At that point, but like, I guess maybe they're similar. I don't know. You get $400 extra with Kuzmenko, but like, I don't know. Calgary's one of these teams where it's just like, no matter what I do tonight, I feel like I'm gonna get burned by him. You know what I mean? And it is Dostal. I just went and looked. He just got confirmed, even though Gibson was the first one off. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. This game sucks. Let's get to the last game of the night. Vancouver Canucks with a 2.6 total. Heading into Vegas, the Golden Knights have a 2.9. It's kind of, I guess I'm not surprised at the total. Maybe a little bit. There's no ownership in this game at all. The highest owned line is 2.1% projected, and that's Eichel, Marchessault, Barbashev. Then Miller, Garland, Dakota Joshua at 1.6, and then every other line in this game is under 1%. And interestingly enough, the line that I had circled was Pettersson, Besser, Hoglander. They've been pretty high event. But we were talking a little bit about this game before the show, and it's just like Vancouver's been in a rut, at least from a goal scoring standpoint. So, like, I don't know if this is the best matchup to get them out of it. Like, all of the Vegas defensemen are healthy except for Alec Martinez, maybe. I don't remember. But Petrangelo's back. That second pair is just really good. Theodore's still in, you know what I mean? Like, they're fully loaded. Like, I think Pettersson, Besser, Hoglander is a nice MME choice at 16.9 at that ownership. You know what I mean? It doesn't take much to get over the field, and they've been a pretty good line in the small sample. So I think as an MME play, that's fine. Same with the Eichel line. But I don't think in 1 to 3 I'm going to be fully, I'm not going to, put them in my single entry here tonight. I'm going to look elsewhere. especially with the game being a 5.5 total.
Yeah. I did write up the Pettersson line mainly for this reason is like Pettersson and Hoglander have been able to succeed with a whole bunch of different wingers. What I highlighted in the picks article was Pettersson and Hoglander are up to 272 minutes together, 5-on-5, 4.3 goals per 60 minutes in that span. They've done it with 4 different wingers skating between 30 and 80 minutes each next to them. Like, they've done it with 4 different wingers. So, like, even though there's no sample of Brock Besser, I imagine that they'll be just fine with Besser on the line. And you get 2 or 3 guys on the top power play unit. It's one of those things where if I was 20 maxing 150, like, absolutely, I would have some Vancouver 1 here. Single entry, I don't know if I would necessarily get down that far. On the Vegas side, it's the Carlson Dorofeyev Mantha line that I'm most interested in. Again, they're one of those lines that you can stack with, you could probably even put them with Florida if you want to play like a 6K or 7K defenseman or whatever. But Carlson and Mantha, 65 minutes together, 91 shot attempts, 3.7 expected goals per 60 minutes, 5-on-5. I'm a big Dorofeyev fan. He's a really good net front guy. He's like Voronkov, like we talked about with Columbus yesterday in that sense. Like, he's good at getting to the net to get really high danger shots off. Was as a prospect, is in the NHL. So I like that Carlson Dorofeyev Mantha line if you're playing a super expensive Minnesota, if you're playing expensive Florida or something like that. Otherwise, I don't think there's any need to play them.
Yeah. Agreed. Coming up after us, same as yesterday, MLB Live Before Lock at 5 p.m. with Greg and Matt, 6 p.m. NBA Live Before Lock with Josh and Eric, and then 7 p.m. the Playback Live watch-along stream. That's usually with Josh and Greg. So if you're playing NBA or MLB, stay tuned for that. Should be a good time. Let's talk about defensemen here. Don't really love the top of the board. I think, the 2 that stick out to me are Weegar and Jacob Chikrin. I guess like Yossi and Dahlin are fine, but Weegar definitely stands out as my favorite play in the top. I don't know how much, I don't spend up for defensemen too often, but if I was, it would be for Weegar. I usually live in the mid-range and the punt, just the way I build for the past, however, 10 years or whatever. Who you liking in those ranges?
Yeah, Weegar at the top, like, pretty easily. He's just so good for peripherals on DK, running top power play, great power play spot, and all that. I have Dahlin number 2. I think Dahlin and Carlson are both in play in that game. Like, Carlson is also pretty good at generating peripherals. He's not as much of a shooter, but he does shoot some. And Yossi's fine, obviously. In the mid-price range, like both sides of that Montreal-Florida game, like Montour and Matheson, I think certainly in play. I wrote up Alex Pietrangelo in the picks article because he's like a diet Weegar. He's not in a great power play spot, doesn't get top power play minutes, but he produces across the board, shots, blocks. And it's his lowest price on DraftKings of the season at $5,200. Also, Chris Letang on the road against New Jersey, where it's not a good power play spot. Want to focus at 5-on-5. Letang's been pretty good at 5-on-5. Cheap defensemen, there are some obvious guys, Ryan Pulock and Adam Pelech. Gustav Forsling for Florida. Simon Nemec down to 3,200 in a pretty good spot for New Jersey. Worries me that Siegenthaler's back. Maybe he doesn't get 20 minutes, but, we'll see. There's a couple cheap defensemen I don't mind. Henry Jokiharju, 2,900. From Buffalo, Nico Mikkola. He didn't get a ton of minutes last night. Maybe that comes back up here tonight for Florida. Stoneman, punt, projecting pretty well at Stochastic is Urho back at 9 and for Anaheim at 2,500.
I'll just mention Olin Zellweger played 20 minutes last game. Power play 2, 3K. And I guess you could take a stab on Declan Chisholm and hope he's power play 1. He has been playing, 17 minutes, and which isn't awful for 3K if he doesn't. Let's talk about some goalies here. Top of the board, Markstrom, Sorokin. I'm okay with both of them, actually. I just, don't really want to spend up that much for goalie here tonight. Don't mind Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen either for a spend-up option at 8K. I think Linus Ullmark at 7,800 is in place. Both goalies in that game for me, Saros or Ullmark. Then if I'm spending down, I think it would be Montembeault.
Yeah. Allen, Ullmark, guys at the top that I do like. I don't mind Logan Thompson. He's not my favorite in that price range, but I think he's playable. It's Allen and Ullmark for me. But yeah, the cheap guys, I like Lindgren and Montembeault both here tonight. I think Frostback said he had interest in Lindgren, if I'm not mistaken. So I like Montembeault better.
Load in the Bruins. Not the Bruins, the Sabres. If he goes Charlie Lindgren, Sabres. Holy moly, my voice. My voice is shot. I don't know what's happening. Be like if you're happy quick.
My client, Brock Nelson.
Hell yeah. Going JJ Peterka.
I wrote him up in the Pixel article. We like Buffalo here tonight.
We do like Buffalo, and they are bipolar, so we'll be back on Thursday complaining about it, I'm sure. Never again, that man is in the list. Tyler legitimately has 4 players in the NHL that he can play that isn't on the list. So, like, no wonder why he never cashes, because he has to put in guys who are inactive in his lineup. But yeah, we'll be back on Thursday. We'll be here Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Going to take the day off tomorrow since it's only 5 games. And I'm sure the GPPs won't be anything exciting. So good luck, everybody, and we'll catch you on the flip side Thursday.
See you Thursday, everybody.